Welcome to Tees Voices, telling the stories of the people in our NHS community.
My name's Elliot Kennedy, and in the studio today I have Mark Daz. What's your role, Mark?
Good morning, Elliot. So my role is as a Group Non-Executive Director, and I'm also a member of the boards both at North Tees and Hartlepool NHS Foundation Trust and also South Tees NHS Foundation Trust. And a Non-Executive Director is a role which is part of the board, but we don't take part in what happens day to day and not involved in the operations of the organisation. What we do is we provide that independent oversight, taking a look at what happens in terms of the strategy, the guidance, and we provide expertise into the board in terms of some of our backgrounds, the different backgrounds that myself and my non-executive colleagues bring to the organisation.
So why did you take the job?
I think of a lot of reasons. First of all, I decided to retire from full-time work. And I wanted to go into a role where I was able to bring some of my background and expertise in, and the health service is been part of my life for a long time. So I was approached by a headhunter and asked if I would be interested, and I was really excited about being involved with the NHS in this region, in particular at South Tees initially, and then towards the development of the University Hospital Tees. You know, we are a big region with areas of quite high social deprivation, and the health service is a really important part in our communities in terms of improving the health of the people around us.
What did you do before in the NHS?
So in the NHS before, believe it or not, my very first job while I was at university, as I was here at North Tees, and I used to be a domestic on the wards while I was at uni. But actually, after that, I went on and graduated, and I went into human resource management. I worked internationally in Poland, in Romania, in America, and also worked for some big multinational organisations as a HR director. And I also had a period of time in my life where I was a police officer, and I worked as a police sergeant and inspector in the streets of Middlesbrough and Stockton.
Now, what committees do you sit on?
So I have three areas and boards which I sit on. So obviously the main board, which is the University Hospital Tees board, which is obviously the group. So I sit on there and we meet monthly. But I also chair the People Committee, and I also sit on the Resource Committee as well.
So what does the People Committee do?
So the People Committee, so all of our committees are based around a board assurance framework. So we're there to ensure that we look at different parts of what the organisation does and really challenge, look for assurance, and at times provide support and expertise around some of those areas in terms of strategy. So we want to look at the people strategy, and I know Rachel, the Chief People Officer, and her team are putting together the new people plan, which will be coming out very shortly. We'll look at that in the People Committee, ask the questions, is that really providing us a level of direction that we're looking for as a board? And also we look at the people values. I think a lot of people have contributed to the work that's been taking place over the last few months around what are our values as the University Hospital Tees. And we've been looking at that process and how it's taken place. We've been providing some assurance to the board that process has taken place properly. And so when those values come out, we will hopefully feel comfortable that they represent what people really want and what people really see as the strong values that we want to have as an organisation. We look at equity, diversity and inclusion. What are we doing? How are we doing it? Where are the areas that we need to improve? What resources we have? You know, do we have sufficient resources? And in those kind of discussions, not only do we look at the resources that we have, but then we have to work in tandem with the resource committee and ask the question, can we afford it? And those are some really important decisions, especially as we move forward in the next year with the financial challenges that are clearly going to be evident in the NHS. Education and training, it's a really important part of what we do. So do we have the right education and training that we need, not just for now, but in the next 5 and 10 years? If you think about our leadership development programme that we have, that operates both at North Tees and at South Tees across the two trusts, how can we do that together, you know, as one University Hospital Tees? And the investment that you make in leadership doesn't reap its dividends, not for 5 years, it's potentially 10 years. So you need to be thinking a long time in the future. You also think about our nursing staff at the minute. There's a good example that we had at the People Committee a few months ago, where we look at the number of students going into the nursing training at the University of Teesside, And actually, that's lower than normal. That's been lower in the last 2 years than we've expected. So what impact may that have on our nursing recruitment, not next year, but in the next 4 and 5 years? So we've constantly got to be asking the questions, not just what's happening today, but are we being prepared for the future? And then we'll also look at issues around our health and safety and issues around our performance as well.
So how's the committees changed since we've joined as University Hospital Tees?
So before we looked at University Hospital Tees, which was really a really important move for health across the Tees Valley, we operated 2 separate people committees. There was one at South Tees, which I chaired, and Anne Baxter, who's another non-executive director and the vice chair, actually chaired the people committee at North Tees. So what we did is we've now brought those together. So we have a group people committee, and over the last 8 to 9 months, we've been looking at how we bring the reports together. So at one point you would get one report talking about freedom to speak up for North Tees and one report talking about that for South Tees. Now we have a single report looking at freedom to speak up across the University Hospital Tees. The work that's taken place to make that happen has been exceptional. People have worked really hard, really looked at how we do things and the different systems that exist and being able to bring them together. So now, very much around the people committee, we have a single view of those people issues I talked about earlier that's taking place across the group.
And for the future?
So the future's, I think most people can read the news. People can read that things are going to get a little bit tough financially in the next few years. There's going to be, obviously, the new clinical strategies that get developed and will start to be implemented as the group starts to mature in terms of what it does. And the People Committee will constantly look at that. We're very excited about the work taking place with the University of Teesside on the medical school and what that means for developing clinical talent and clinicians across the region here in the Tees Valley. So all those things are really exciting, but again, making sure that we treat people with respect, we care for them in what they do, and try and provide them the best experience of us as an employer than we possibly can.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. Till next time, you've been listening to Tees Voices.